I never thought I'd be the type of person to snoop through my husband's pockets, but there I was, standing in our walk-in closet at 11:30 at night, holding a crumpled receipt that made my stomach turn. My name is Marlo, and until 10 minutes ago, I was just a normal nurse practitioner with a seemingly perfect life. 20 years of marriage, a beautiful daughter, and a husband who still brought me coffee every morning. At least, that's what I thought I had. The receipt was from Le Petit Jardin, one of those fancy French restaurants downtown where you need reservations months in advance. $280 for dinner for two, including a bottle of Chateau Margaux. Ethan and I hadn't been there since our 10th anniversary, and he knew I didn't drink red wine anymore. It triggered my migraines. Mom, Olivia's voice made me jump. I shoved the receipt into my pocket as she appeared in the doorway, already in her pajamas. What are you doing in here? Just organizing your father's dry cleaning. I lied, gesturing to the pile of suits I'd been pretending to sort. Shouldn't you be studying for your calculus test? She rolled her eyes. I'm taking a break. Dad just called. He's staying late at the office again. Some big presentation tomorrow. Of course he is. I forced a smile, though my chest felt tight. Third time this week. You okay, Mom? You look weird. Just tired, honey. I walked over and kissed her forehead, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. Don't stay up too late. After Olivia went back to her room, I sat on the edge of our bed, pulling out my phone. My fingers hovered over Ethan's number. But what would I say? Hey, honey, quick question. Who were you whining and dining at Le Petit Jardin last Thursday? Instead, I opened my photos and took pictures of the receipt from every angle. Something in my gut told me I might need them later. The sound of the garage door opening downstairs made me jump again. I quickly returned the receipt to Ethan's jacket pocket, exactly how I'd found it. Marlo? His voice carried up the stairs, followed by his footsteps. You still up? I grabbed a random book from my nightstand and pretended to read just as he walked in, his tie loosened and hair slightly disheveled. He looked exhausted, but there was something else, a lightness in his movements that seemed out of place for someone who'd been working late. How was the presentation prep? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Brutal. He loosened his tie completely. Marketing's really pushing for this new campaign. You know how it goes. I did know how it went. I'd heard this explanation so many times lately, I could probably recite it in my sleep. You should have seen the dinner they ordered in, he continued, heading for the shower. Chinese takeout from that place on 5th. Not exactly Le Petit Jardin, but it did the job. My hand clenched around my book. He was lying so smoothly, I almost doubted myself. Almost. Dad. Olivia appeared again, this time with her calculus book. Can you help me with this problem? Mom's hopeless at math. Sure, princess. He smiled at her. That special smile he reserved just for our daughter. Let me grab a quick shower first. As they chatted about her homework, I watched them, feeling like I was seeing them through glass. When had I become the outsider in my own family? Later that night, as Ethan slept soundly beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The receipt felt like it was burning a hole in my brain. Tomorrow, I decided I would make a call to Tommy Hayes. We'd gone to high school together, and now he was a private investigator. I'd looked him up months ago, when I first started noticing something was off, but had talked myself out of it. Not this time. This time, I needed to know the truth, even if it destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. Tommy's office looked exactly like I'd expected. Cheap coffee maker in the corner, manila folders everywhere, and blinds that had seen better days. What I hadn't expected was how nervous I'd be, sitting across from someone I used to share algebra notes with, asking him to investigate my husband. You sure about this, Marlo? Tommy leaned back in his chair, looking more distinguished than he had in high school, despite the coffee stains on his tie. Once we start digging, we might find things you can't unknow. I pulled out my phone and showed him the receipt photos. I'm already finding things I can't unknow. At least this way, I'll have the whole truth. He nodded, studying the images. The restaurant's interesting. It's right across from Collins Marketing, where Ethan works. Popular spot for their executives. How do you know that? Had a case there last year. CEO's daughter works there too. Young hotshot named Jenna Collins. Real ambitious type. Something about the way he said it made my stomach clench. Before I could ask more, my phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Going to Dad's office after school. Working on college apps with his new marketing assistant. Don't wait up. Hongxing. Everything okay? Tommy asked, noticing my expression. My daughter's been spending a lot of time at Ethan's office lately. Says she's getting career advice. I looked up at Tommy. How much do you charge? We spent the next hour working out the details. As I wrote the check, I tried not to think about how this money was supposed to go toward Olivia's summer program. That evening, I made Ethan's favorite lasagna, hoping to coax some family time out of what felt like increasingly separate lives. The kitchen filled with familiar smells, but something felt off, like trying to recreate a photograph where everyone's smiling. But you can't remember what the joke was. Olivia breezed in around 7, practically glowing. Mom, you'll never believe it. Jenna's helping me with my marketing internship application. She's amazing. She went to Stanford too, just like where I want to go. Jenna? I kept my voice steady, though my hands shook slightly as I plated the food. That's your dad's new assistant? Well, she's more like junior executive now. Dad says she's the youngest person they've ever promoted so fast. Olivia grabbed her plate, already heading for the stairs. Can I eat in my room? I have to finish this application. Actually, I thought we could eat together tonight. As a family. I looked at her hopefully. Your father should be home soon. She rolled her eyes. Mom, this is important. It's my future. You're always saying I need to focus on college stuff. I know, but let her work, honey. Ethan's voice startled me. I hadn't heard him come in. He kissed my cheek, but his cologne smelled different, sweeter, more floral. That's my girl, always hustling. Olivia beamed at him before disappearing upstairs. I watched Ethan loosen his tie, noting how he seemed more energized than usual after a long day. How's the new assistant working out? I asked casually, serving his plate. Jenna? She's great. Real go-getter. He took a bite of lasagna. This is good, but did you use a different recipe? Tastes different. Same recipe as always. I set my fork down, suddenly not hungry. You're just not home for dinner much anymore to remember what it tastes like. He looked up, something flickering in his eyes before his phone buzzed. He checked it, smiling slightly at the screen. Sorry, work thing, he muttered, typing rapidly. On a private number? The words slipped out before I could stop them. His head snapped up. What? Nothing. I stood, gathering my barely touched dinner. I'm tired. Think I'll turn in early. Later, lying in bed, I heard Ethan and Olivia laughing downstairs, sharing some private joke. My phone lit up with a text from Tommy. Found something. Meet tomorrow? I typed back, yes, with trembling fingers, then deleted our conversation thread. Rolling over, I noticed Ethan's side of the bed was still empty, though it was nearly midnight. Downstairs, I could hear him on the phone, speaking too softly for me to make out the words. Sleep didn't come easily that night, but determination did. Tomorrow, I'd start getting answers, whether I wanted them or not. The manila envelope sat between us on Tommy's desk like a live grenade. His face told me everything I needed to know before he even opened it. Maybe you should sit down for this, Marlo. I remained standing. Just show me. He spread out the photos one by one. Ethan and a young woman, stunning, probably mid-20s, having lunch at Le Petit Jardin. The same pair walking through the park, his hand on the small of her back. Another at a hotel bar, leaning close, laughing at some private joke. That's Jenna Collins, Tommy said quietly. CEO's daughter. But there's more. The next photo made my knees buckle. Olivia was there, sitting with them at an outdoor cafe, looking more relaxed than I'd seen her in months. They looked like a family, the kind that shares inside jokes and doesn't worry about college applications or curfews. How long? My voice sounded strange, distant. Based on credit card records, hotel bookings, about 8 months. Tommy hesitated. Olivia started showing up in the surveillance about 6 weeks ago. I picked up the cafe photo, studying my daughter's face. She knows. She's known all along. There's something else. Tommy pulled out his phone, playing a video. It was Olivia and Jenna shopping, trying on dresses and taking selfies together. They've been spending a lot of time together. Jenna's been mentoring her, I guess you could say. The reality hit me like a physical blow. Not only was my husband sleeping with another woman, but my daughter had chosen her too. They'd built a whole separate life while I was working extra shifts at the hospital, thinking I was providing for our family's future. I need to go. I gathered the photos with shaking hands. Marlo, wait. Tommy caught my arm. There's more evidence if you need it for the divorce. Divorce? I repeated the word, testing how it felt. 17 years of marriage reduced to a legal term. I drove aimlessly for hours, the envelope burning a hole in my passenger seat. Every red light brought another memory. Ethan teaching Olivia to ride a bike, family vacations where we'd stay up late playing board games. The way he used to bring me coffee in bed every Sunday morning. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Having dinner with Dad and Jenna to discuss internship stuff. Don't wait up. 2 hearts. I pulled over, my vision blurring. The casual way she'd written Jenna's name. Like she wasn't the woman destroying our family. Like this was normal. Without thinking, I drove to Collins Marketing. The building was mostly dark except for a few offices. I spotted them through the window of the top-floor restaurant. Ethan, Jenna, and Olivia, laughing over what looked like dessert. Jenna was showing Olivia something on her phone while Ethan watched them both with undisguised affection.
My phone buzzed again.
Ethan this time. Working late. Don't hold dinner. The lie was so casual, so practiced. How many times had I read similar messages and believed them? How many family dinners had I kept warm, only to wrap them up and put them away untouched? I watched as Jenna touched Ethan's arm, leaving her hand there longer than necessary. Olivia didn't even blink. This was her normal now. They were building memories without me, creating inside jokes I'd never understand, sharing moments I couldn't reclaim. The tears finally came, hot and angry. I thought about the college fund I'd been building for Olivia since she was born, the extra shifts I'd picked up to make sure she could go anywhere she wanted, all while she was planning her future with the woman who'd stolen her father. My phone buzzed one more time. Tommy, there's more if you want to see it, but maybe what you need isn't more evidence. Maybe it's a plan. I wiped my eyes, looking up at the happy scene in the restaurant window. They hadn't noticed me sitting here, hadn't spared a thought for where I was or what I was doing. Well, they'd notice soon enough. I started my car, my mind already spinning with possibilities. They wanted to play happy families? Fine. But first, they were going to learn what it felt like to lose everything they took for granted. Starting with that college fund. The real estate agent's smile never wavered as she showed me around the empty medical office space. It's perfect for a wellness clinic, she said, gesturing to the large windows overlooking downtown. Previous tenant was a chiropractor, so all the basic infrastructure is here. I walked through the rooms, mentally placing equipment, imagining the possibilities. For 15 years, I dreamed about opening my own holistic healthcare practice. Now, Olivia's college fund sat in my account, waiting to be redirected. My phone buzzed, another text from her. Got the Stanford interview. Jenna's helping me prep this weekend. She's seriously the best. I closed the message without responding. Let Jenna help her practice for interviews she'd never get to attend. The lease terms are quite favorable, the agent continued. And the location. I'll take it, I interrupted. When can I move in? Later that afternoon, I sat in my car outside the bank, staring at the withdrawal slip in my hands. 17 years of extra shifts and careful saving, all about to be transformed into something else entirely. My finger hovered over Olivia's number, some maternal instinct still wanting to warn her, to give her one last chance. Instead, I called Tommy. You sure about this? He asked after I explained my plan. Using the college fund, that's not something you can undo. They're already planning her future without me, I said, watching people stream in and out of the bank. Why shouldn't I plan mine without them? Because you're better than they are. His voice was gentle but firm. And because there might be another way. What do you mean? I did some digging into Colin's marketing. Seems Jenna's been moving company funds around, making some questionable investments. If Ethan's involved, he is. I cut in. He handles all their major accounts. Then maybe instead of burning your daughter's future, we could. A knock on my car window made me jump. Ethan stood there, looking concerned. I quickly ended the call. Everything okay? He asked as I rolled down the window. I saw your car from the coffee shop. Fine, I said, trying to hide the withdrawal slip. Just running errands. His eyes caught the bank logo. Is this about Olivia's college fund? Because I've been meaning to talk to you about that. I think we should let her use some of it for that summer program Jenna recommended. The casual way he said her name, like she had any right to make decisions about our daughter's future, made something snap inside me. Actually, I said, stepping out of the car, I was thinking of investing it differently. What do you mean? I pointed to the empty medical office across the street. I'm opening my own clinic. His face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger. That's Olivia's money. For Stanford. No, it's my money. From my extra shifts and overtime. While you were having dinner with your girlfriend. The color drained from his face. Marlo, don't. I held up my hand. Just don't. You and Jenna can figure out how to pay for Stanford. I'm sure with all that marketing money floating around, you'll find a way. Understanding dawned in his eyes. You've been investigating me. Investigating you? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. I didn't need to investigate you, Ethan. You and Jenna did a pretty good job of flaunting everything yourselves. Even got our daughter involved in the performance. He grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. Whatever you think you know. I know enough. I pulled away, and soon everyone else will too. Walking into the bank, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Behind me, I could see Ethan on his phone, probably warning Jenna. Let them worry. Let them wonder what else I knew about their creative accounting. I filled out the withdrawal slip with steady hands, ready to invest in my own future for once. They'd taken my family, my trust, my daughter's loyalty. But they couldn't take this moment of choosing myself, of turning betrayal into opportunity. The teller smiled as she processed the transaction. Would you like a receipt? Yes, I said, thinking of that first restaurant receipt that started it all. I definitely want to keep track of everything. I spread the photos across our dining room table like a twisted family album. Each one told its own story. Ethan and Jenna's secret dates, Olivia's complicit smiles, their perfect little world that didn't include me. The front door opened just as I placed Tommy's financial records beside them. Mom, Olivia called out. Dad's car is here, but he's not. She stopped dead when she saw the display. What is this? Where's your father? My voice sounded calmer than I felt. He's picking up Jenna. We're supposed to discuss my internship. Her eyes locked on a photo of the three of them laughing at Le Petit Jardin. You've been spying on us? Spying implies you were trying to hide something. I picked up one of the financial documents. Though I suppose your father and Jenna were hiding quite a bit. The front door opened again. Ethan's voice carried through the house, followed by a feminine laugh that made my skin crawl. Olivia? Your mom's car is here. Ethan froze in the doorway, Jenna nearly bumping into him from behind. Perfect timing, I said, watching their faces as they took in the scene. I thought we could all have a family discussion about creative accounting and college funds. Jenna stepped forward, her confidence wavering. Marlo, I can explain. Can you explain why my daughter calls you for advice instead of me? I pushed a photo toward her. Or why you're playing mother to my child while sleeping with my husband? That's enough. Ethan moved between us, but I noticed how he positioned himself slightly closer to Jenna. Olivia, go to your room.
No.
I stood up. She stays. She should hear how her perfect mentor has been embezzling company funds to finance her lifestyle. How her father's been helping cover it up. You don't know what you're talking about, Ethan snapped, but his eyes darted to the financial records. Don't I? I turned to Olivia. Did they tell you where your internship funding was really coming from? Or how that summer program they promised you might disappear when the audit hits. Olivia's face paled. What audit? The one Tommy's evidence triggered this morning. I watched Jenna's composed facade crack. Funny how quickly the SEC responds to whistleblowers. You had no right. Ethan's voice shook with rage. This isn't just about us anymore. You're destroying everything. No, you destroyed everything. I slammed my hand on the table, sending photos scattering. You destroyed our family the moment you chose her. And you. I turned to Olivia. You chose them too. Well, guess what? I'm choosing me. Mom, please. Olivia's voice cracked. We can fix this. Fix what? The fact that you've been lying to me for months? That you helped them hide their affair? My laugh sounded hollow. Or maybe you want to fix the fact that I used your college fund to start my own business? The silence was deafening. Olivia stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. You did what? Ethan stepped forward, but Jenna grabbed his arm. We should go, she whispered urgently. If there's really an audit. Running already? I picked up my phone. Should I call your father now, Jenna? Tell him how his daughter and his star executive have been cooking his books. Mom, stop. Olivia was crying now. This isn't you. No. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw the fear in her eyes. Not fear of the situation, but fear of me. Maybe you don't know who I am anymore. Just like I don't know who you are. Jenna pulled Ethan toward the door, whispering frantically about damage control. Olivia stood frozen between us, tears streaming down her face. Choose carefully, Olivia, I said quietly, because this time there's no going back. She looked between me and her father, who was already following Jenna out. In that moment, I saw her make her choice. As she ran after them, I sat back down at the table, surrounded by the evidence of my destroyed family. The front door slammed, and the house fell silent. I picked up my phone and dialed Tommy's number. It's done, I said when he answered. Now, let's finish what they started. The line went quiet for a moment before Tommy responded. Marlo, are you sure this is what you want? I looked at the empty doorway where my family had stood moments ago. Want?
No.
But it's what they deserve. The news about Colin's Marketing's financial scandal broke on a Wednesday. By Friday, my clinic's waiting room furniture had arrived, and Olivia had blocked my number. I watched the movers arrange chairs while my phone buzzed with another call from Tommy, probably warning me again about how my revenge plan had spiraled too far. I let it go to voicemail. The local business journal's headline glared from my laptop. Colin's Marketing under federal investigation. CEO's daughter and senior executive named in probe. Below was a photo of Ethan and Jenna leaving the federal building, his hand protectively on her back, the same gesture I'd seen in Tommy's surveillance photos.
My phone buzzed again.
This time, an unknown number. Is this what you wanted? Jenna's voice was raw. To destroy everyone? I sat on one of the newly delivered chairs, watching the movers struggle with the reception desk. You seemed pretty good at destruction yourself. They're freezing my accounts. The SEC is. She took a shaky breath. Olivia's summer program deposit? The internship? It's all gone. Funny how actions have consequences. She's devastated. She thinks she's lost everything, her future, her father, and now you. Don't you dare talk to me about my daughter. My voice cracked. You took her from me long before any of this. No, Marlo. You pushed her away with your rules and expectations.
She paused.
We gave her what you couldn't. The truth in her words stung worse than any lie. I hung up, hands shaking. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number, Olivia, using Ethan's phone. How could you do this to us? Dad might go to jail. Everything's ruined. I hate you. The movers asked where to put the last chair, but their voices seemed distant underwater. I pointed vaguely, then escaped to my new office, empty except for a desk and the dreams I'd traded my family for. Tommy found me there hours later, sitting in the dark. You missed the evening news, he said, flipping on the lights. Jenna's father had a heart attack after the SEC interview. He's in critical condition. I looked up sharply. What?
Yeah.
And Olivia. He hesitated. She tried to use her emergency credit card for a hotel. The one you gave her? It was declined because of the account transfer for this place. My chest tightened. Where is she? Staying with Ethan at some budget motel. Jenna's there too. All their assets are frozen. I stood up, grabbing my keys, but Tommy blocked the door. Don't, he said gently. You'll make it worse. They're already talking to lawyers about suing you for the college fund. Let them. I sank back into my chair. I have nothing left to lose anyway. That's not true. You have this. He gestured to the empty clinic. You have a fresh start. A fresh start. I laughed bitterly. I traded my daughter's future for an empty office and some waiting room furniture. You traded lies for truth, he corrected. The rest is just collateral damage. My phone buzzed again, another news alert. Someone had leaked photos of Ethan and Jenna to the press, including ones with Olivia. The comments were brutal, calling them everything from gold diggers to homewreckers. People speculating about my daughter's role in it all. I did this, I whispered. I wanted revenge, but not this. Tommy sat across from me. There's still time to what? Fix it. I showed him Olivia's text. She hates me. My husband's facing criminal charges. A man's in the hospital. And for what? So I could prove I wasn't powerless. He started to respond, but my phone lit up again. This time, it was my lawyer. Ethan's attorney called, she said when I answered. They're not just going after the college fund. They're claiming emotional distress, defamation. It's getting ugly, Marlo. After she hung up, I stood at my office window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, my daughter was huddled in a cheap motel room. Her world collapsed around her. Because of me. Because I'd chosen revenge over redemption. What have I done? I whispered to my reflection in the dark glass. What have I become? The call came at 3 a.m, 2 weeks after the scandal broke. I almost didn't answer, but something made me grab my phone on the last ring. Mom, Olivia's voice was barely a whisper. I need help. I sat up, instantly alert. Where are you? The Sunset Motel on Highway 9, room 115. A pause, then, please hurry. I found her sitting on the curb outside the motel, a small duffel bag at her feet. Her hair was unwashed, her Stanford sweatshirt wrinkled. She looked smaller somehow, younger. They're getting married, she said as I approached. Dad and Jenna, right after his plea deal goes through. I sat beside her, careful to maintain distance. What happened? I heard them talking about how the marriage might help their case, make it look more legitimate. She wiped her eyes. They didn't know I was awake. Jenna said. She said I was useful for making everything look normal. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice neutral. And your father? He agreed. Her voice cracked. Said I helped sell their story. Made it easier to hide everything. A door slammed somewhere in the motel. Olivia flinched. I was so stupid, she whispered. I thought Jenna really cared. That she saw something in me Dad saw, something you didn't. I saw everything in you, I said quietly. That's why I pushed so hard. Maybe too hard. She turned to me, tears streaming now. I told the FBI everything today. About the fake receipts they had me deliver, the meetings I helped cover up. They said I might have to testify. Oh, honey, Dad was so angry. He said I betrayed them, that I ruined everything. She hugged herself tightly. But they ruined everything first, didn't they? They ruined us. Before I could respond, headlights swept across the parking lot. A familiar car pulled up, Ethan's. Olivia. He stormed toward us, Jenna close behind. What did you do? I stood, positioning myself between them and my daughter. Back off, Ethan. She talked to the feds. Jenna's perfectly maintained facade had cracked, showing the desperation beneath. After everything we did for her. Everything you did for her? I laughed harshly. You used her. Both of you. That's rich, coming from you. Ethan stepped closer. You're the one who stole her college fund, who leaked those photos to the press. Actually, Tommy's voice came from behind us, making everyone jump. I leaked those. Figured if you were going down, might as well make it spectacular. He moved to stand beside me, his presence steady and calm. Got it all on video, by the way. This touching family reunion might be interesting to your lawyers. Ethan's face contorted. You haven't changed, Marlo. Still trying to control everything, manipulate everyone. Stop it. Olivia stood up, her voice stronger than I'd heard in weeks. Just stop. I know what I did wrong, but at least I'm trying to fix it. You're still lying, still pretending this is someone else's fault. Olivia, sweetheart. Jenna reached for her, but Olivia stepped back.
Don't.
Don't pretend you care now. She grabbed her bag, then turned to me. Can we go home? Home. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. The clinic has an apartment upstairs, I said carefully. It's small, but perfect. She cut me off, already walking toward my car. This isn't over. Ethan called after us. Actually, it is. I turned back one last time. You can have your wedding, your plea deals, your lies. But you don't get her. Not anymore. In the car, Olivia stared straight ahead as we pulled away. I'm sorry, she whispered. For everything. Me too. I reached over and squeezed her hand. But maybe we can start over. Do better this time. She nodded, then asked quietly, the clinic, does it need any help? Like, maybe a part-time receptionist while I take some community college classes? For the first time in months, I felt something like hope. I think we might have an opening. Behind us, the motel's neon sign flickered and died, leaving only darkness in our rearview mirror. 6 months later, I stood in my clinic's waiting room, watching Olivia arrange fresh flowers at the reception desk. The morning sun caught her hair, reminding me of when she was little, how it would shine like copper in the light. First patients in 15 minutes, she said, checking the computer. Mrs. Chun for her follow-up. I nodded, remembering how nervous I'd been about our first patients. Now we had a steady stream of regulars, people who trusted us with their healing. The irony wasn't lost on me, how I'd found my way to helping others heal while trying to mend my own wounds. The mail cart rattled by outside, and Olivia went to collect our deliveries. She returned with a stack of envelopes, one of them cream-colored and expensive-looking. It's from Jenna, she said quietly, holding it out. My hand trembled slightly as I took it. Ethan's sentencing had been last week, 3 years, with possibility of parole. Jenna had gotten 18 months, her testimony against the company earning her a lighter sentence. Inside was a single page of expensive stationery. Marlo, they say revenge is best served cold, but healing needs warmth. Thank you for showing me the difference. I'm sorry for everything. Jenna.
P.S.
The trust fund my father set up for me? I've arranged for it to be transferred to Olivia when I start my sentence. It's not Stanford money, but it might help with community college. Consider it restitution. I looked up to find Olivia watching me, her expression uncertain. What does it say? Instead of answering, I handed her the letter. Watched her face as she read it, saw the complicated mix of emotions play across her features. Mom, she set the letter down carefully. Do you think people can really change? I paused, considering everything that had brought us here. I think sometimes we have to break before we can rebuild something stronger. The clinic's door chimed as Tommy walked in, carrying his usual morning coffee offering. He'd become a regular fixture here, helping with security systems and background checks for new staff. Sometimes I caught him looking at me in a way that made me wonder about second chances of a different kind. Mrs. Chen's early, he said, setting my coffee on the reception desk. Want me to tell her you'll be a few minutes? No, I smiled, watching Olivia arrange her desk for the day. We're ready. Later that evening, as we closed up, Olivia lingered by the door. I saw Dad yesterday, she said suddenly, at the visitors' center. I kept counting the day's receipts, giving her space to continue.
He asked about you.
About the clinic. She twisted her keys in her hands. I told him we're doing good, that we found our way back to each other. And what did he say? That he was glad. And sorry. She looked up at me. I didn't forgive him. Not yet, but maybe someday. I thought about Jenna's letter, about revenge and healing, about how sometimes the path forward isn't what we expect. Someday, I agreed, locking the cash drawer. Ready to head upstairs? I thought we could try that new pasta recipe. Actually, she smiled hesitantly. Tommy mentioned there's a new French restaurant downtown. Not as fancy as Le Petit Jardin, but I felt something shift in my chest, like a final piece settling into place. Dinner out sounds perfect. As we walked to our cars, I glanced back at the clinic sign. Green Wellness Center. Healing begins here. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but maybe it was the one we needed. Mom, Olivia called from her car. I love you. 3 simple words, but they held everything: forgiveness, understanding, hope. The revenge I'd sought had nearly destroyed us both, but here we were, rebuilding something new from the ashes of what we'd lost. I love you too, honey, I called back. See you at the restaurant. Sometimes I've learned the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's healing. It's growth. It's finding your way back to love, even when the path leads somewhere unexpected.
Just this week, I turned 37. Not only did birthdays become less enjoyable as I grew older, but they also served as a constant reminder of my chronic sickness, which would sometimes return like an unwanted houseguest. This year was no different. I found myself going back to the clinic the day following my so-called celebration, which consisted of just myself and takeaway pizza, for a routine examination and some pain management therapy. The white walls, the stench of disinfection, and the too optimistic smiles of the staff made the clinic a reassuring yet gloomy environment. I was familiar enough with the personnel to address most of them by name. As I waited, I looked around the space. That was the second time I saw Jack. He was the too beautiful to be true nurse who had intermittently worked on my care team for the previous year. He had black hair, a quick grin, and genuine caring eyes. And he was coming directly at me. Amelia, I didn't think you would return that quickly. I couldn't quite place the tone of his voice, but it was a mix of worry and curiosity as he said, "Everything all right?" I tried to seem nonchalant as I said, "Just the regular tune-up," but my stomach was doing strange flips. Jack laughed. "All right then, let's check you in. I'm going to look after you today." My heart wasn't prepared for any of the million possible meanings that his words, "taking care of you," may have. I couldn't help but notice the way other patients, particularly the younger women, were staring at him as we strolled and conversed our way to the examination room. It seems that Jack's charisma had an effect on more people than just myself. He took my vitals with a professional yet kind touch. Blood pressure is rather elevated. Feeling anxious about anything? With a sidelong glance, I conceded. You could say that. You know life. Jack annotated my chart, saying, "Tell me about it." "Amelia, you should take it easy. You exert too much pressure on yourself." Simple for you to say, I shot back, a little more caustic than I meant to. Not everyone has the luxury of relaxing. Jack put down his pen and raised an unwavering stare. "I understand. You're here, battling all the time. When do you have personal time? For the purpose of something more? For anybody, perhaps?" I was taken aback by the intensity of his gaze as I looked up. "Jack, what are you trying to say?" He paused, then decided to go forward. "Amelia, I see you. Not only the ill individual, not only the lady who is fighting something all the time. I see you, and I like what I see, sort of." Suddenly, the space felt too tiny and he was too close. I took a deep breath and tried to collect myself. "No, Jack, I'm not. I can't, with my condition." With a stern tone, he interrupted, "I don't care about your condition. You are important to me." Beneath all the medical records and doctor appointments lies the true you. A part of me wanted to run because it was too much, too quickly. But another part of me pondered what it would be like to let someone in, to not be alone in this, a part I'd suppressed for so long. I started seeing Jack more often after that day at the clinic. It was now more than just doctor's visits. It included lengthy drives, restaurants, and movies. Things I hadn't really allowed myself to appreciate in a long time. Jack made things enjoyable and simple. He had a knack of making even the most mundane activities appear thrilling. We were at my apartment one evening, approximately 6 months after that profound chat in the clinic, simply unwinding after a demanding week while sitting on the sofa with some inexpensive takeout. He had just cracked a joke, and I was laughing so hard my sides were hurting when he suddenly became serious. "Amelia, I need to ask you a question." I stopped laughing in mid-sentence because his tone had altered. Inhaling deeply, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a little box. My heart skipped a beat. "The finest months of my life have been spent with you, Amelia. I am aware of its speed. Will you marry me? I know it's ridiculous, but I don't want to wait to ask." Although he spoke firmly, I could sense a hint of anxiety in his voice. I looked at the ring, then back at him, then at him again. "Jack, I'm at a loss for words." "Say yes," he smiled, the crooked smile that had captured my heart from the first moment. I pulled the box out of his hand and opened it to see the ring, which was a lovely understated design that wasn't overly ostentatious. "Yes, Jack, you are loved. I pray to God to assist me. However, if we proceed, we will do it in my manner." Anything, he blurted out. I stated unequivocally, "I want a prenup." His countenance remained the same, showing neither surprise nor anger, just an open, expectant one. "Everything I own goes to you in the event of an emergency. However, if we parted ways—" Jack interrupted me. "Yes, that doesn't concern me. Nothing of yours is mine. I only want you, Amelia." At that point, I knew the answer. All well then, indeed. I will marry you, yes. His face lit up with a smile that resembled the dawn after a long, dark night. With a kiss, he placed the ring on my finger, thus beginning our frenzied, hurried, yet completely genuine engagement. We didn't wait long. The wedding was planned for just a few weeks later, a quiet affair at the city hall. Just him, me, his sister, and her husband. It was strange planning a wedding without the usual fuss. No big dress, no hundreds of guests, just the essentials. But it felt right with Jack. We signed the papers, exchanged rings, and it was done. We were married. As we walked out of the city hall, his sister threw some confetti she brought, laughing and shouting congratulations. Life with Jack started off like something out of a fairy tale, or at least what I figured a fairy tale felt like. He'd quit his nursing job, said he was done taking care of sick folks day in and out. He said it wore him down. I didn't mind much. The restaurant was doing well enough, and I enjoyed having him around more. For the first few months, Jack turned into the kind of husband you read about in old-fashioned romance novels. He cooked meals that would make a chef weep, and he kept the house spotless. Dinners were these lavish affairs, and I tell you, nobody set a table like Jack. Candles, the good china, music playing soft in the background. I felt like royalty. But then things started to shift. It was subtle at first. I'd come home and he'd be holed up in his office, the room he claimed for himself right after the wedding. He said he needed a space to manage house stuff, bills, and whatnot. "Babe, dinner in 20. He'd call out, not even poking his head out to say hi properly. One evening, I came home a bit frazzled from the restaurant. It had been one of those days. The supplier messed up our order, the cook was late, and then a waitress quit mid-shift. I was in no mood for niceties. I walked in, expecting the usual dinner ready, table set, but Jack wasn't in his office. The house was quiet, too quiet. I wandered into the kitchen and found a note on the fridge. Ordered pizza to avoid cooking. Upstairs. That was it. No love, no see you in a bit, nothing more than I expected. I tossed my bag on the counter, frustration bubbling up. The pizza arrived and I ate it cold, sitting right there in the kitchen all by myself. A couple of days later, I tried to talk to him about it. He was in his office again, door slightly ajar. I knocked, then pushed it open. He was on the computer, didn't even swivel around to look at me. "Hey, can we talk?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Sure, what's up?" His eyes were still on the screen. "It's about the other night, and well, the past few weeks. You've been distant. Is everything all right?" He minimized whatever was on his screen and finally turned to face me. "Yeah, everything's fine. Just got a lot on my mind, you know." "Like what?" I stepped in, curiosity piqued. "Just stuff, house stuff, bills, that kind of thing." It sounded like an excuse. "Jack, you know you can talk to me, right? If something's bothering you." He cut me off with a wave of his hand. "I said it's nothing. Don't worry about it." But of course, I worried. It wasn't like him to shut me out. That night, dinner was a quiet affair. He cooked, but the effort felt minimal. No candle, no music. We ate mostly in silence. Coming home early wasn't something I did often, given the chaos that usually brewed at my restaurant. But that day, something just told me to head back, maybe some sixth sense or just plain luck. As I stepped through the door, the sound of bustling in the kitchen caught me off guard. I saw a middle-aged woman humming to herself while chopping vegetables. "Who are you?" I blurted out, not hiding my shock. The woman turned, a bit startled, then smiled. "Oh, hello. You must be Mrs. Amelia Freeman. I'm Linda. I've been helping out around here for about a year now. Cooking, cleaning, all the housework. Jack hired me. He said it was too much for him to manage." Too much for him to manage? That was news to me. "Right, I see. Well, keep doing what you're doing, Linda. I need to sort something out." As she nodded and turned back to her cooking, I walked out, my mind racing. Where was Jack spending all this time, if not at home managing things like he'd said? I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them sitting around. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number for a detective agency I'd heard about. It was time to find out what my husband was really up to. A couple of days later, the detective came back with news. Not the kind I'd expected, though part of me was relieved. No other woman. But gambling. My Jack was blowing money at casinos, racking up debts like they were going out of style. When he came home that evening, I was waiting for him, the detective's report in hand. His face fell when he saw the look on mine. "Amelia, what's wrong?" he asked, dropping his keys on the table. "Where have you been spending our money, Jack?" My voice was calm, too calm. His eyes started away. "What do you mean?" "Gambling, Jack. Casinos, debts ring any bells." I waved the report. He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. I was going to tell you. I just needed to sort it out first. By gambling more, my patience was wearing thin. It's not like that. It started small. I thought I could win back what I'd lost. He trailed off, looking miserable. I took a deep breath. This was not how I imagined our life together. You need help, Jack, professional help. And you're going to get it, or this, I gestured between us, is over. He looked up, eyes wet. "I'll do anything, Amelia. Please, just help me this one time. I promise I'll stop. I'll get treatment. Fine, but I'm only doing this once. You're signing a receipt for every penny I pay to clear these debts, and you're getting treatment. I was firm, resolute. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I paid off the debts totaling up to $60,000. He signed the receipt and started his treatment. It was tough seeing him struggle, but a part of me felt like we were finally getting somewhere, that maybe this nightmare was just a bump in our road together. A couple of months had passed since Jack's gambling issue had come to light, and with his recovery seemingly on track, life had started to settle into a sort of routine again. One night, while we were sitting on the couch watching some forgettable TV show, Jack turned to me with a look I couldn't quite read. "Amelia, I've been thinking. Maybe it's time we thought about having a kid," he said, his voice careful, searching mine for a reaction. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. We had talked about this before, long before we got married, and he knew my condition. "Jack, you know I can't. My doctors have always been clear about the risks. Pregnancy could kill me. My body wouldn't handle it." He nodded, but there was something off in his nod, almost like relief, which didn't sit right with me at all. But I pushed that thought away. We need an heir, Amelia. Someone to carry on after us. He continued as if rehearsing a well-thought-out script. An heir. I laughed a bit harsher than I intended. This isn't the medieval times, Jack. It's just us, and my restaurant isn't a kingdom. But he wouldn't drop it. Over the next few days, he brought it up again and again, each conversation more insistent than the last. One afternoon, I got a call from his sister, Laura, who was an obstetrician at the clinic where I sometimes got my treatments. "Amelia, Jack tells me you're hesitant about having a child. You should reconsider. With today's medical advancements, it's perfectly safe." "Safe? Laura, you've seen my medical files. You know safe is a relative term for someone like me." I was standing in the middle of my kitchen, phone pressed hard against my ear, trying to keep my voice steady. Everyone thinks they're an exception. Sometimes you just have to think about more than just yourself. "You're just being selfish," she snapped back. "Selfish? Really? It's my life we're talking about, my health." I was fuming now, the phone shaking in my hand. She didn't apologize. Instead, she hung up, leaving a bitter silence in her wake. Jack came home that evening to find me still upset. "What's got you all worked up?" he asked as he dropped his keys on the table. "Your sister called. She's got opinions about us having a baby," I said, not meeting his eyes as I stirred the pot on the stove a bit more vigorously than necessary. "We're married, Amelia. It's about what we both want, and I want a child." He was getting heated now, his words sharp. "I want to live, Jack. That should matter more," I shot back. The argument spun in circles with no end. The next few weeks were filled with tension. Meals were silent affairs, and conversations were clipped. I could feel the wedge between us growing, turning into a chasm filled with unsaid words and frustrations. I remember that day like it was yesterday, clear and sunny, with a chill in the air. The kind that tells you something's off, but you can't put your finger on it. I got home earlier than usual, only to find the apartment bustling in a way that made my heart sink. There in the middle of my living room stood Jack, his sister Laura, her husband Mike, and a stack of boxes. "Amelia, good. You're here," Laura said, her tone firm and cold, as if she was about to deliver a business report. "We're moving in. This is Jack's apartment, and you need to leave." I stared at them, my mind racing to catch up with the scene unfolding before me. "What are you talking about, Laura? This is my home." Jack stepped forward, his face set in a grim line I had never seen before. "Amelia, I can't do this anymore. You've been controlling and demeaning me for years. I've had enough. His words hit like a slap. Controlling, demeaning. Jack, what in the world? Yeah, Amelia, it's always been about what you want, what you need. I've been nothing but a servant here. He cut in, his voice rising with every word. Cooking, cleaning, taking care of you. And in return, I get nothing but insults. Laura chimed in, her voice equally accusatory. We've seen it, Mike and I, how you treat him. It's time Jack stood up for himself. Jack shoved a stack of papers toward me, his eyes gleaming with a mix of anger and something like triumph. I filed for divorce, Amelia, and I'm seeking compensation for years of emotional labor and abuse. You'll hear from my lawyer. Instead of the outrage they expected, I felt a cold calm settle over me. I looked around at the apartment, at Jack and his co-conspirators, and I knew there was nothing left for me here. All right, Jack, you'll hear from my lawyer too. Without another word, I went to our bedroom. No, my bedroom now, and began packing a suitcase. Within an hour, I was in my car, driving away from the apartment, from the light, and the people who had turned against me. I drove to the place I had always known would be my sanctuary if the world fell apart. The luxurious house in the elite cottage village with a specialized clinic nearby. This house, bought with the foresight of a future where I might need immediate and intensive care, represented my true safe haven. As I entered the gates of the village, the security guards nodded with recognition, a small comfort on a day filled with upheaval. Inside my house, I walked through the spacious sunlit rooms, each corner curated over the years to provide comfort and care, a stark contrast to the cold, calculated home I had just left. I laid down on the plush sofa, a piece chosen specifically for days when my body rebelled and demanded rest. Lying there, I couldn't help but feel a twisted gratitude towards Jack for showing his true colors before it was too late. I had prepared for a life of possible solitude from the very beginning, and now it was this foresight that comforted me. The tranquility of my new sanctuary was briefly interrupted a few days later by a frantic call from Jack. His voice was a mix of panic and rage. You framed me, Amelia. This is all some sick game to you, isn't it? He shouted as soon as I answered. I couldn't help but smile at the absurdity. Jack, if you think there's something to talk about, come over. I'm not playing any games, but we can talk. I sent him my new address. The call ended, my voice stark against his tempest. When they arrived, Jack, Laura, and her husband Mike, the guards let them through, and I watched from my front porch as they stepped out of the car. Their expressions were comical, gaping at the expanse of my home as if they'd walked into a fairy tale. Jack regained his composure enough to confront me. Your lawyer called. I have to pay rent for the apartment, $6,000 next month, because you sold it years ago. You planned this all along. I leaned against the doorframe, finding his agitation more tiresome than alarming. Jack, that apartment was a rental property under a company I own. You assumed it was mine to live in, not to own. He sputtered, his face reddening. But I put time into that place. I cared for it. I deserve compensation. And if you don't give me this house, I'll take you to court. Laura, ever the supporter, piped up, her voice shrill. And why not? Look at it, Jack. She owes us, living in luxury while we got nothing but scraps. The next few weeks were filled with tension. Meals were silent affairs, and conversations were clipped. I could feel the wedge between us growing, turning into a chasm filled with unsaid words and frustrations. I remember that day like it was yesterday, clear and sunny, with a chill in the air. The kind that tells you something's off, but you can't put your finger on it. I got home earlier than usual, only to find the apartment bustling in a way that made my heart sink. There in the middle of my living room stood Jack, his sister Laura, her husband Mike, and a stack of boxes. "Amelia, good. You're here," Laura said, her tone firm and cold, as if she was about to deliver a business report. "We're moving in. This is Jack's apartment, and you need to leave." I stared at them, my mind racing to catch up with the scene unfolding before me. "What are you talking about, Laura? This is my home." Jack stepped forward, his face set in a grim line I had never seen before. "Amelia, I can't do this anymore. You've been controlling and demeaning me for years. I've had enough." His words hit like a slap. Controlling? Demeaning? Jack, what in the world? "Yeah, Amelia, it's always been about what you want, what you need. I've been nothing but a servant here," he cut in, his voice rising with every word. "Cooking, cleaning, taking care of you. And in return, I get nothing but insults." Laura chimed in, her voice equally accusatory. "We've seen it, Mike and I, how you treat him." It's time Jack stood up for himself. Jack shoved a stack of papers toward me, his eyes gleaming with a mix of anger and something like triumph. "I filed for divorce, Amelia, and I'm seeking compensation for years of emotional labor and abuse. You'll hear from my lawyer." Instead of the outrage they expected, I felt a cold calm settle over me. I looked around at the apartment, at Jack and his co-conspirators, and I knew there was nothing left for me here. "All right, Jack, you'll hear from my lawyer too." Without another word, I went to our bedroom. No, my bedroom now, and began packing a suitcase. Within an hour, I was in my car, driving away from the apartment, from the light, and the people who had turned against me. I drove to the place I had always known would be my sanctuary if the world fell apart. The luxurious house in the elite cottage village with a specialized clinic nearby. This house, bought with the foresight of a future where I might need immediate and intensive care, represented my true safe haven. As I entered the gates of the village, the security guards nodded with recognition, a small comfort on a day filled with upheaval. Inside my house, I walked through the spacious sunlit rooms, each corner curated over the years to provide comfort and care, a stark contrast to the cold, calculated home I had just left. I laid down on the plush sofa, a piece chosen specifically for days when my body rebelled and demanded rest. Lying there, I couldn't help but feel a twisted gratitude towards Jack for showing his true colors before it was too late. I had prepared for a life of possible solitude from the very beginning, and now it was this foresight that comforted me. The tranquility of my new sanctuary was briefly interrupted a few days later by a frantic call from Jack. His voice was a mix of panic and rage. "You framed me, Amelia. This is all some sick game to you, isn't it?" he shouted as soon as I answered. I couldn't help but smile at the absurdity. "Jack, if you think there's something to talk about, come over. I'm not playing any games, but we can talk." I sent him my new address. The call ended, my voice stark against his tempest. When they arrived, Jack, Laura, and her husband Mike, the guards let them through, and I watched from my front porch as they stepped out of the car. Their expressions were comical, gaping at the expanse of my home as if they'd walked into a fairy tale. Jack regained his composure enough to confront me. "Your lawyer called. I have to pay rent for the apartment, $6,000 next month, because you sold it years ago. You planned this all along." I leaned against the doorframe, finding his agitation more tiresome than alarming. "Jack, that apartment was a rental property under a company I own. You assumed it was mine to live in, not to own." He sputtered, his face reddening. "But I put time into that place. I cared for it. I deserve compensation. And if you don't give me this house, I'll take you to court." Laura, ever the supporter, piped up, her voice shrill. "And why not? Look at it, Jack. She owes us. living in luxury while we got nothing but scraps. When I learned of the cancellation, I was shocked and expressed my fear in my voice. "What do you mean there's been a cancellation?" With a voice that betrayed both perplexity and urgent alarm, I asked. I was on the phone at work during my lunch break at the time, and I realized that I had accidentally said more than I meant to, so I quickly lowered my voice. Since I hadn't requested any cancellations, why was this happening? My mind became blank as my thoughts stopped. In sharp contrast to my growing worry, the insurance company woman on the other end of the call remained calm. "According to our records, we received a cancellation request from you, and the procedure has already been completed," she calmly stated. Encouraged by my sister-in-law, Alice, an insurance agent, I had taken out a savings-type life insurance policy. Under pressure to fulfill her high sales goals, she had talked me into choosing a more expensive plan than what was generally offered in the market. I'm Betty, a 42-year-old office woman who shares an apartment with her young daughter and her husband. Everything about today was mayhem from the beginning. Henry, my husband, abruptly announced an overnight work trip and started hurriedly packing his things as soon as he got out of bed. As all of this was going on, our first-grader daughter Linda started crying because she couldn't find her arithmetic textbook. Because of her young age, Linda requires a lot of assistance, and her difficulties exacerbated the day's chaos. In the middle of all this, I wanted Henry would just sort his stuff by himself instead of adding to the chaos by asking where his new socks or travel bag was. With Henry, this year has been very difficult, and I've been thinking about getting a divorce more often. I told Linda that I was upset that they hadn't prepared the night before, and she immediately apologized and offered her sincere regret. "I apologize, Mom. Next time, I'll exercise greater caution." Reassuring her, I said, "It's all right. That was my error. I ought to have checked in with you yesterday." But dealing with Henry was a whole other ballgame. Linda is still young, and we could have saved ourselves from the pandemonium of this morning if Henry had done his homework beforehand. It would have been kind of him to buy new socks for his vacation, or at least organize his old ones. I was really annoyed by Henry's disrespectful comments about requesting new socks for his travels. "I had no idea about your business trip schedule," I said. "Aren't the socks I washed and put away good enough?" I thought it strange that he insisted on buying new socks for every trip, but I didn't voice my thoughts. Though he hadn't mentioned it, his work visits are rare, occurring perhaps once every several months, and this one had undoubtedly been planned well in advance. He ought to have informed me in advance or purchased the new socks on his own if they were necessary. My heart ached to see Linda's tear-streaked face as she begged, "Daddy, Mommy, please stop fighting." I looked over at her. I apologized to Linda. "It's all right. Together, let's locate your textbook." Henry then quietly went back to packing as I assisted Linda in looking through her backpack for her misplaced math textbook. I couldn't resist taking a quick peek at Henry. I saw that he was bringing more laid-back attire for his weekend vacation than for his professional travel. This information sparked previous worries in me and triggered a big red flag. Considering his previous behavior, is Henry having another affair? His previous 2 instances of infidelity proved my concerns weren't baseless. The first occurrence had me on the verge of divorcing Linda just before she was born. Reluctantly, though, I chose to stay after his family intervened and offered heartfelt apologies. His mother and sister especially pleaded with me not to leave him. Then he cheated once again with a person he met on a dating app last year. Henry considers himself discreet since he is usually forthright and rarely nuanced, But in my opinion, his attempts at stealth are sometimes blatant and border on hilarious. When discovered, he once more turned to sobs and excuses. Knowing his customary arrogance, it was both heartbreaking and maddening to see him so modest. I was very clear then, one more mistake, and our marriage would end. As a precaution, I even had him sign preliminary divorce papers and move all our funds into my account. Despite my forgiveness, his lack of connection with Linda and his selfishness had completely destroyed my affections for him. For Linda's sake, I thought we should put off the divorce until she was older. Thank goodness, we immediately located Linda's arithmetic textbook, and she happily headed off to school. Alone with my unease from the morning, I decided not to make lunch and spent my break visiting a neighboring store. I spotted an insurance company advertisement there and realized my policy was about to get a bonus payment. These bonuses are huge incentives for me because of the hefty premiums I pay. I began thinking about what I could get Linda for a bonus, maybe a new fall wardrobe. I went to the bank to check my statement since I was feeling a little better and wanted to make sure the bonus had been deposited. I was shocked to see that the anticipated money was missing. Not only was the anticipated bonus absent from my bank account, but the insurance fee for this month had also not been withdrawn. At first, I was just perplexed by this difference. But remembering Henry and I's tumultuous talk about cancellations this morning, a terrible sensation started to creep in. I was so concerned that I called the insurance company to find out what was going on. I generally dealt with my insurance concerns through my sister-in-law Alice, but she was not in that day, so I spoke with another person. That's when the cancellation confusion came to light. The representative informed me that a cancellation payment had been processed, but I hadn't seen any funds in my account. She insisted that all the paperwork was correct and that the insurance company had adhered to proper procedures, subtly implying that the fault wasn't theirs if the policy was canceled without the owner's knowledge. Firmly, I clarified once again that I had no intention of canceling the policy. I'll follow up with Alice and my husband, but please double-check everything on your end as well, I requested. After making my point clear, I ended the call. Before I knew it, my lunch break was nearly over, and I realized I had neither the time nor the appetite to eat the lunch I had bought, as other concerns weighed heavily on my mind. Feeling the need to address this issue promptly, I informed my boss that I had to leave early and quickly wrapped up my remaining tasks, leaving the office ahead of schedule. I immediately called Henry, wondering if he was genuinely on a business trip or if something else was afoot. "Betty, why are you calling?" "I'm at work," Henry answered after a few rings, his voice tinged with irritation. However, in the background, I could hear lively music, casting doubt on his claim of being at work. "It's absurd that you think you can avoid getting caught," I said, my frustration evident. "Sorry to bother you, but my life insurance was canceled without my knowledge, and there's no record of any cancellation payment. Do you know anything about this? I'm considering contacting the police as it might be a scam." "Ha, calling the police?" Henry replied, then confessed. It was me. I had suspected that Henry and Alice might have been involved in this somehow. When I hinted at getting the authorities involved, Henry quickly confessed, clearly caught off guard. Although I had suspected him, my frustration now erupted. "So it was you. Where's the cancellation payment then?" I demanded. "I used it to help Mom out," Henry replied nonchalantly. "Help out? Did something happen to your mother that she suddenly needed money?" "No, she just mentioned she wanted to go on a family trip for once." I was utterly stunned by his audacious response. "You canceled my life insurance to fund a trip. Was the business trip just a cover?" "Yeah, I'm the beneficiary, so you can't complain, right? We're staying at a luxurious hotel." I'm in the lobby right now, and you wouldn't believe the size of the chandelier here. Henry seemed to think it was acceptable since he had been caught, even bragging about the details as if to impress me. What's with this attitude? I countered, infuriated. I have plenty of complaints. Why would you cancel the insurance without telling me? I've been paying those premiums out of my salary. You should be able to cover your trip expenses. Ah, it's so annoying, Henry replied dismissively. But it's the money I get if something happens to you, right? So it's my money. You're healthy and not in any danger, so we can just start paying the premiums again. I was dumbfounded by Henry's flawed reasoning. But the terms change as you get older, and the premiums increase. Do you not understand that? Well, I'm not the one paying for it, he said. Henry's careless disregard only added to my frustration. Do your parents know about this, that you canceled my life insurance without telling me? Didn't your father say anything? And Alice is involved in this too, right? You and Alice forged my signature, didn't you? Yeah, Mom and Dad were actually happy about it, he admitted, as if that justified his actions. They thought it was a good idea. It's your fault for controlling all our money. I just wanted to have fun for once, Henry argued, as if the situation was trivial. It's no big deal. We're on a family trip, and everyone's happy. That family includes your parents and Alice, right? Why aren't Linda and I included? Aren't we family too? I asked, my voice tinged with hurt and disbelief. Insurance is meant for emergencies. Henry, shouldn't you have discussed using it for a trip with me first? But you knew I would say no. You and Linda are always together. It's fine for me to spend time with my real family once in a while, he retorted. Plus, Alice was planning to sign you up for a new life insurance policy, so it's a win-win. I can't believe you're not embarrassed by these excuses. Almost like a child who didn't tell because he knew I'd object. That's exactly why you didn't tell me. You knew I'd be upset. It's so frustrating. If you're going to keep complaining, maybe I should just get a divorce. Henry continued, his tone unusually bold, perhaps bolstered by being at a tourist spot. Understood, I replied sharply before hanging up. Be prepared. I'm going to make sure Henry and his family face the consequences. I muttered to myself, my patience finally snapping. Henry had taken my forgiveness for granted too many times. Despite my threats of divorce, I had once thought my in-laws were decent people. Even though Alice had pressured me into an expensive life insurance policy, I believed she wasn't acting with malice. But decent people don't secretly cancel their daughter-in-law's life insurance to fund personal pleasures. Like husband, like family, I thought grimly. I was done with all of them. I went straight to visit the lawyer, clutching the divorce papers Henry had filled out earlier as if they were a talisman. I filed for divorce immediately. Afterward, I picked up Linda from after-school care. On our way home, I gently explained the situation to her. She was initially surprised, but I reassured her, emphasizing that our well-being was my top priority. Linda seemed to grasp the situation after I took the time to explain everything in detail. Once we arrived home, she asked, "So, Daddy isn't coming home anymore?" "He won't be home tonight because he's staying somewhere else." "We're getting divorced, so we'll be living apart," I answered her cautiously, trying to gauge her understanding and feelings. "Then let's start cleaning up now quickly," she suggested. "What's wrong?" I asked, a bit confused by her urgency. "We're separated from Dad, right? Mom, you don't have to cry anymore. I hate it when Dad makes you upset," Linda explained. "Did you always tell us to stop fighting because you were worried about me being sad?" Of course, I admitted. I had planned to avoid divorce for Linda's sake, but it seemed she had been suppressing her true feelings all along. She often intervened in our arguments because she was concerned about me. Daddy never plays with me, even on his days off. When I try to talk to him, he just says, "Be quiet, go away." Like this morning, he only uses me to say mean things to you. I've been so sad. "I love you, Mom." She smiled at me, and her smile warmed my heart. Seeing Linda's understanding of the situation and her resolve was heart-wrenching and brought tears to my eyes. Her insights into how Henry had prioritized himself over us both, and her fed-up stance, made it clear that she too was ready for a change. "I understand, sweetheart. I'm sorry for putting you through such difficult times. From now on, it will be just the two of us, but I promise to take good care of you. I love you so much." Yay! Linda's joyful exclamation filled me with determination. I vowed never to let her feel sad again. While Linda worked on her homework beside me, I busied myself with tasks like consulting a lawyer and researching real estate agents and moving companies. I then reached out to my parents to discuss our next steps and gather their support, ensuring that Linda and I would have a strong network as we moved forward. When I explained the situation to my parents, their immediate response was, "Come back home right away." This way, Linda won't have to change schools. My father also offered to borrow a truck from a friend to help us move our things. The next morning, I informed the landlord, the school, and the families in Linda's commuting group that we would be relocating to my parents' house, briefly explaining the circumstances. I plan to handle the school's detailed paperwork later and call my workplace to request a day off for the next day. I wanted to complete most of the preparations before Henry returned. By the time Henry got back the next day, my parents had arrived, and we swiftly moved our belongings to their home. Everything was settled except for Henry's things, which were still in the apartment. I left a note that read, "We are divorced. We are strangers now," and exited the apartment. I imagine Henry's shock at finding us gone and felt a wave of relief and satisfaction. The smooth execution of this divorce was thanks to the experience gained during Henry's previous affair. I had warned him then, next time there will be no discussion. We're getting divorced. We had agreed that I would retain custody of all marital assets. With that in mind, Linda and I began our new life at my parents' home. Later, my frantic mother-in-law called. She must have reached out because I had blocked Henry's number. Knowing Henry's tendency to cry easily, despite his usual bravado, I pictured him probably sobbing away. "What are you thinking, divorcing my son when he hasn't even cheated this time?" she yelled, her voice so loud it hurt my ears. I instinctively pulled the phone away from my ear. "Betty, it's not too late. Apologize to my son right now. He's been crying nonstop because he's so upset. Aren't you embarrassed to make such a fuss over this? Apologize." "Me? Why?" I was so taken aback by her words that I blurted out, "Who are you?" My mother-in-law clearly didn't expect such a response from me, and her words suddenly stopped. My own sharp response surprised me. "Well, yes, it's me, your mother-in-law. Come on, Betty, what's wrong with you? You're not losing your mind, are you? You're still young." "No, I only have one mother. Are you some kind of scam artist?" I replied half jokingly yet pointedly, not providing her with the acknowledgement she expected. Given that we were now divorced and effectively strangers, and considering their past actions, like canceling my life insurance without my permission, I saw no reason to engage in a serious conversation. It seemed fitting to maintain a somewhat detached demeanor. "Don't joke around, Betty. If you're going to act like this, we have our own ways of dealing with things," she warned, her voice seething with anger. "And what exactly can you do?" I countered, skepticism threading through my words. We agreed that if there was another issue, I'd get a divorce immediately. And Henry himself told me over the phone that he wanted a divorce. My firm stance made her pause, and I seized the opportunity to press further. If you wanted to go on a trip, you should have consulted me first. Instead, you committed a crime. Unauthorized cancellation of life insurance can be considered forgery, punishable by imprisonment. I'm ready to pursue this thoroughly. Henry's family has never had financial difficulties that I am aware of, so their actions seemed not just impetuous, but also dangerous. That was the exact reason I was unable to overlook it. Hold on, we are not criminals. Please accept my apology. Let's discuss, she said, her tone abruptly changing with the prospect of potential incarceration. However, it was too late for debates or excuses. I cut the call short, banned my in-laws' numbers, and distanced myself from any more unhealthy relationships. With this firm decision, Linda and I were able to move on from the upheavals of the past and begin a new chapter of calm and stability. Subsequently, I learned that Henry became a hermit after quitting his work and withdrawing from social interactions due to his extreme shock at the divorce. Regarding the life insurance fiasco, we were able to settle it outside of court using a mechanism intended for just these kinds of insurance conflicts. In the end, the insurance firm fired my sister-in-law, which even made the little press. My in-laws' activities made them the focus of gossip in the area, and family members chastised them for their bad judgment and shameful behavior, which caused them to become socially isolated. Henry and my sister-in-law didn't seem to be doing well financially, since they were both unemployed. At my parents' house, Linda and I were enjoying a contented and free existence. My daughter had faced difficulties as a result of the circumstance, but I remained dedicated to giving her the love and attention she deserved. With the love of my parents as our pillar, we were able to find stability and serenity in this new chapter of our life, and we were progressively starting again without the upheaval of the past. I have made up my mind to buy the fancy automobile from you. Sincerely, Tiffany, someone like myself doesn't require such ostentation. However, my parents have been considering purchasing a new vehicle, and this one could be the perfect match for them. I've seen a shift in Peter ever since we were married. He's become a more conceited person, even lusting after the fancy automobile my parents gave me. Honestly, I'm tired of it. Tiffany is my name. I'm 28 years old, and I went to college with Peter. It has been 3 years since our marriage. This Peter, on the other hand, is the social butterfly, loved by everybody, the complete reverse of me. I have few close pals and am more of an introvert. Our relationship took a surprising turn when it began. We grew close over common classes and study sessions at first. I wasn't expecting him to show interest in me, but I was so happy when he asked me out that I said yes without thinking twice. That marked the start of our partnership. Peter's charisma, his laid-back demeanor, and his commitment to his academics were what pulled me in. It never seemed like he would have trouble finding another partner if he so desired, because he had an abundance of acquaintances. Many of them were trendy and gorgeous women. To be honest, I questioned him tremblingly once whether he really believed that I was the one for him. His response was perplexing. He inquired why I'd ever asked such a question, seeming shocked. I admitted that I was insecure a lot, and that all I wanted to know was why he picked me. He paused to think for a bit before stating flatly that he felt at ease with me. I had hoped for a more sincere reaction, but before I could say anything more, he seemed aloof and preoccupied with his phone. I apologized for bringing up the topic and dropped it so as not to create a fight, but the doubts persisted. Our relationship progressed well over time, at least on the surface. After graduating, we tied the knot and moved into a condo. While Peter maintained his doctoral studies and part-time work, I was fortunate to secure a steady position at a corporation. My mom was overjoyed to hear of our engagement, but she also acknowledged that she and my dad were starting to worry about when I would really introduce a partner. I was a little sorry I hadn't told them about Peter sooner, but my mother was just glad I had someone in my life who was interested in me. She knew how independent I was. My parents have served as my lifelong role models. Like Peter and myself, they met in college and have remained deeply in love and respect for one another ever since. While my mom followed her passion for cooking and eventually became a culinary instructor, my dad worked his way up the corporate ladder. They have always encouraged one another's aspirations and appreciated one another's independence. I want to form a union much like theirs. Even though I came from a wealthy household, I've always cherished being independent. I didn't go to graduate school like Peter because of this. My goal was to become independent and establish my own life. My basic desire has always been to one day have a healthy marriage, children, and a household similar to the one I grew up in. It might seem simple, but for someone like me, it's a big objective. Things began to change when Peter and I moved in together. Peter did not make much of a financial contribution, even though he was still a graduate student and worked part-time. He dismissed my suggestion that he allocate a larger portion of his salary to our costs, adding, I do contribute. When we moved in together, didn't you say you would take care of the living expenses? His remarks unnerved me, Tiffany. Peter was very focused on his graduate studies since he had always dreamt of becoming a professor. But even though he pursued his goals, I felt like I was responsible for the majority of the debt. Given my steady employment, I had promised Peter he need not worry about money. So when he lashed back at me, I was at a loss for words and could only murmur a feeble assent. Peter gave a voice to a deep sigh. Tiffany, you wouldn't comprehend. The cost of attending graduate school is high. After a little pause, he said, besides, socializing is part of it too. Oh, and I need $11,000 for a research trip, he said, almost as an afterthought. Please lend it to me. I'll reimburse you afterwards. These kinds of requests increased in frequency, which put greater stress on our relationship. He began to disappear for longer periods of time, leaving me alone with cold, unfinished meals and missed phone calls. Upon his eventual return, which was frequently cheerful, I discovered that I had unexpectedly become forgiving. He'd suggest, hey Tiffany, remember you wanted to go somewhere. I have tomorrow off, let's go. Or he would compliment my cooking, making me feel momentarily appreciated. Every time Peter showed kindness, I caught glimpses of the happy marriage I longed for. It made me hesitate to confront the deeper issues, even though deep down I knew something was wrong. I felt increasingly lonely and anxious, trapped in a cycle of brief moments of joy followed by prolonged periods of solitude. I found myself unable to share these struggles with anyone, especially my parents, who were genuinely thrilled about our marriage. Even so, they must have sensed that something was off. I hadn't visited them in a while, and when I finally did, my dad suggested I stay for dinner. My mom prepared an elaborate meal to welcome me, and during the meal, my dad mentioned that Aunt Lori had recently visited. She wanted to see me, he said, describing her as spontaneous, ambitious, and fiercely independent, the same traits that had always defined her. I'll reach out to her soon, thanks, Dad, I replied, appreciating their subtle way of encouraging me to reconnect with family. As my dad reminisced about how much Lori cared for me, he smiled, recalling how she playfully teased that Peter had stolen me away, even though she had never intended to marry herself. Before I met Peter, Lori had been more of a confidant than an aunt. I could talk to her about things I couldn't discuss with my parents. She understood me on a deeper level and had always been there to support me, especially in the beginning. I had always been too timid to discuss my relationship with Peter, especially with Lori, but now I felt eager to reconnect. A few days after visiting my parents, I met Lori at a cafe. She was as stylish as ever. As she looked over my outfit, she offered gentle advice. You know, Tiffany, marriage is just the beginning of a lifelong journey for a woman. You should always feel confident and attractive, no matter what. Your clothes can make a big difference, so don't forget to take care of yourself. With a graceful smile, she took a sip of her tea, realizing how much I had neglected my own interests. I apologized for not keeping in touch. Lori chuckled and said, "That's typical of you, Tiffany. It's good to be honest and serious, but being too timid often comes from a lack of experience. Still, I was thrilled when I heard you found someone special. I thought, finally, Tiffany is taking a step forward." It had been ages since I spent time with someone on a day off, and the weather was perfect, making our outing even more refreshing. We settled on the terrace, basking in the warm sunlight. In that tranquil moment, I felt comfortable enough to share my concerns with Lori. At first, I had believed that even someone as reserved as I could make a relationship work with Peter, but lately, doubts had been creeping in. Lori listened attentively, nodding empathetically without interrupting. When I finished, she asked softly, "I suppose you haven't mentioned any of this to your parents, have you?" "Tiffany, no," I admitted. "I even hesitated to tell you today. I didn't want to reveal my vulnerabilities to anyone. I thought I should be able to handle this on my own to prove that I can be truly independent. If Mom and Dad found out, they probably want me to move back home right away. I want to try and handle this by myself as much as I can." Lori respected my decision, not pushing the matter further, but she gently assured me, "If you ever need help, let me know. First, if my dear Tiffany asks, I'll be there for you, no matter where I am." A month later, my mom called me casually. "When you have time, could you come over? It's nothing urgent." Since I had the next day off, I decided to visit my parents. As I pulled up to my parents' house, I noticed a new car parked in the driveway. Excitement bubbled up inside me. "Dad, is this car new? Did you just get it? Can I take it for a spin?" I joked, my enthusiasm evident as I admired the sleek vehicle. "Don't worry about that," Dad said, smiling warmly. "This car is for you, Tiffany. Use it however you like. It'll come in handy." Mom added softly, "We saw this car in a TV commercial and remembered you said you liked it. So it's our gift to you. You've been having a tough time lately, and we wanted to cheer you up. If things get rough, just drive this and come home anytime." The SUV, from a renowned international brand, was a thoughtful gesture that filled me with a deep sense of support and freedom. Dad had even arranged a parking spot near my condo for the new SUV. Overwhelmed, I laughed in disbelief, struggling to comprehend the generosity of their gift. Later, as I drove downtown, I reached into my pocket, retrieved the car key, and pressed the button. The SUV's lights flashed brightly around me. It was then that I heard a familiar voice from behind. "What's with the new car?" Peter asked. I turned to see my husband, who hadn't been home for what felt like an eternity. His presence left me momentarily speechless. He looked at the car with a smug grin. "I see a gift from your parents every time I face Peter." I struggled to find my voice, but I was tired of feeling diminished. "Peter, don't you care anymore? Do you even care about me?" I managed to ask, summoning my courage. Peter's response was a bombshell. "Are you just realizing this now? Did you think I loved you all this time? It's ridiculous how hopeful you are." His mocking laughter echoed in my ears. Something inside me snapped. "Then why did you marry me?" I retorted, louder than usual. Peter's cold reply was shocking. "Wow, you're going to be that blunt about it. So marrying me was just a means to an end for you, huh? And now you want the car too. It's wasted on you." I couldn't believe the harshness of his words. Peter remained unfazed by the pain he caused. With chilling indifference, he added, "You know we're getting a divorce. Without me, you'll never find another man. Think about it." With those cruel words, Peter left without a second glance, leaving me feeling both angry and heartbroken. My head pounded with a headache as I sat in the driver's seat, trying to calm myself. Eventually, I reached out to Aunt Lori for advice. After a few days of reflecting on the situation, I agreed to the divorce and moved back in with my parents. They welcomed me with open arms, and for a while, life felt peaceful again. However, that peace was short-lived. One afternoon, Peter showed up at my parents' house, accompanied by his parents. They all settled into the living room, and Peter's father spoke in a stern tone. "We're here to discuss our son's divorce," he began. As the conversation about the divorce unfolded, I took a firm stand. "If you don't agree to the divorce," I warned Peter, "I'll use Mike On's connections at the university to jeopardize your future." It wouldn't be hard to damage the career of a junior registrar if their daughter files a complaint. Peter, who genuinely cared for me, was taken aback by my approach. He felt my tactics were aggressive and intimidating, as if I was trying to force his hand. His father argued vehemently, "We could easily contest the divorce." He said Tiffany, beneath her simple appearance, is manipulative and greedy. Poor Peter, I heard she even paid him to stay away. She must have entertained other men. We should take this to family court and claim Peter was coerced into this divorce. But if Tiffany were to make a genuine apology, maybe things could be different. For instance, if she gave up the car she's been driving, it might help smooth things over. Peter and his parents listened silently, absorbing his father's protests. Just then, the doorbell rang and my mom answered it. Aunt Lori walked in, appearing behind her. "Sorry I'm late," Lori said, joining the discussion. "How's it going?" Peter's family, who had met Lori only once at my wedding, was taken aback. "What are you doing here?" Peter's mother objected. "It's rude to barge in like this. We're in the middle of something." Lori remained unfazed. "You've heard about Peter's divorce, haven't you? How would an outsider like you know about this?" Peter's mother challenged. Lori continued, "I was informed by my brother earlier. I couldn't miss such an important moment for my dear niece." Peter's mother retorted, "You're probably here to stop the divorce or for money. Are you still going to make accusations after seeing this?" Without missing a beat, Lori pulled out a stack of documents from her bag and laid them out on the table for everyone to see. "I hired a private detective to look into this," she revealed. "It turns out Peter has been cheating on Tiffany with multiple women. He hardly came home because of it, taking advantage of Tiffany's kindness and even asking her for money." The revelation left everyone in stunned silence, and the tone of the meeting shifted dramatically as everyone processed the gravity of Lori's findings. I was deeply immersed in my university research, so when I did make it home, we spent time together sharing meals and going on trips. To the outside world, we appeared like any other married couple. "Say something, Tiffany," Peter pleaded, his voice tinged with desperation. "You don't need to defend yourself," his father quickly reassured him. "We'll handle this. It's not your fault." "That's right," Peter's mother added. "These documents, from who knows where, are surely fabricated." Our Peter would never engage in such acts. He's a kind, outstanding son, kind to his parents. Maybe, Aunt Lori interjected sharply, but it seems his kindness doesn't extend beyond that. Beneath her calm demeanor, Aunt Lori was resolute. She pulled out a photograph from the stack of documents. I was at a hotel for a business meeting recently and saw William there with another woman, looking quite cozy. I had the detective look into William as well, and the results were just as I suspected. Do you understand now? Peter's mother's face went pale as she grabbed the documents and examined them closely. What is this, William? How long has this been going on? It's all lies, isn't it? Kayla, stop looking, William said, trying to snatch the documents from her. But it was too late. Kayla, visibly distraught, confronted William. You've been cheating on me. The car you wanted so badly was for her, wasn't it? No matter how much William tried to calm her down, Kayla was inconsolable. She stormed out of the house, tears streaming down her face, with William trailing behind her, desperately trying to explain. In the ensuing chaos, Peter blurted out, "Hey, wait, what about me?" He followed them out, equally confused. Aunt Lori smiled smugly and winked at me, but the rest of us were left in startled silence. She had obviously foreseen the dramatic course of events and the discoveries that had to happen. Aunt Lori told me that Peter's parents finally got divorced after all of the chaos. She gave me the assurance, you won't fall for such a terrible man again. Let's enhance your beauty even further. I'll teach you every detail of personal hygiene and self-care. Aunt Lori came to visit often, even with her hectic schedule, and she would take me shopping and out to eat. I learned a lot from her at this period, getting fresh insight on confidence and self-care. I decided to go to graduate school a year following the divorce. I devoted myself to learning and growing as a person throughout this time of change in my life. I once heard someone yell my name as I was standing at a street crossing. When I turned back, Peter was still standing there. A long time has passed. You've changed a lot, he said, sounding slightly surprised. At first, I hardly recognized him. The lady who had formerly been his unremarkable ex-wife had transformed into someone incredibly attractive and self-assured, according to Peter. Peter's life had turned south in the meantime as a result of the drama surrounding his parents' public divorce. Because of the upheaval he had caused, his parents, William and Kayla, had stopped providing financial assistance, and he had dropped out of graduate school. Peter found it difficult to cover his living bills and tuition. His former easygoing lifestyle was a faraway recollection. His old splendor had disappeared practically quickly, and the women who had formerly expressed interest in him had moved on. Just as Peter was going to recommend catching up, a man came over. Regret the wait. Are you pals with Tiffany? He inquired. It was Kevin, the guy I'd only recently begun dating. The moment Kevin arrived, it highlighted the new chapter in my life that Peter was no longer a part of. A group of women standing nearby were envious of Kevin. Whoa, what a cute guy. Are they models? They remarked. Kevin nodded to him, seeing my fleeting conversation with Peter. I know him from back in the day. We're done chatting, it's okay. Kevin took my hand and said, let's go. Without another thinking, Kevin led me away with such confidence that Peter was left speechless. I headed toward the crossing with Kevin. I maintained a straight line of sight, my attention on the road ahead and the future that lay ahead. As we drove away, I didn't even turn around once. I'm Martha. A few weeks ago, my father, who had been battling illness, passed away. I wish I could have shown him his grandchildren. Such words escaped my lips, along with a sigh. I got married when I was 25, That was exactly 5 years ago. At my wedding, my father and I made a promise. I'll let you know first when I get pregnant. But that promise remained unfulfilled. That's about the only regret I have about my father. Since his illness was discovered a year ago, I've done everything I could for him. I regularly returned to my parents' home and visited the hospital with my mother. I increased the frequency of phone calls and video chats. I did everything I could think of. Still, I can't help but wonder, could I have done more? I muttered. My mother, sitting next to me, reassured me. You did well, Martha. Really? Yes, your father would be satisfied. Just then, my sister Portia returned and brought the lawyer. My sister entered the living room saying, so, behind her was a man in his mid-40s. I assumed he was the lawyer, and he handed me his business card. I'm Samuel, the attorney. Thank you for coming. Please have a seat. Excuse me, then my mother guided the lawyer Samuel to his seat. As soon as he sat down, my sister blurted out, I heard from this lawyer that Dad left quite an inheritance. It's not all for you, Portia. I knew that. My sister, now in a bad mood, glared at me. I glared back. My sister and I don't get along. We used to be okay, but things turned sour when we found out about Dad's illness. One reason was my sister's arrogant attitude. No matter how many times I reached out, she never visited our father. Of course, I may have said it wrong. I might have been a bit harsh because I was worried about him, but her reaction was also a problem. You're not a child. You don't have to be so stubborn. When I said that, my sister retorted, I'm not being stubborn. I live in the city. It's not easy to come to the countryside. But you can get here in 2 hours by car. Those 2 hours are tough. It costs money. It's money that's important to you. Of course it is. I'm busy, so stop contacting me. With that, she finally stopped talking. Even if she lived far away, she could visit once in a while. I always thought so. That's why our relationship deteriorated so quickly. In the end, my sister never visited our father, so our relationship remained strained. Sensing the tension, the lawyer intervened. Let's calm down, please. Okay, I'm sorry, I apologized, and the lawyer nodded before continuing. As I mentioned on the phone, I have your husband's will. When did this happen? My mother murmured. A few weeks before he passed away, he contacted me. So you went to the hospital? Yes, I had him write the will in front of me with his primary physician present. It turns out they had arranged for the primary physician to contact the lawyer when my father passed away. So after my father passed away, he contacted the lawyer, and in turn, the lawyer reached out to us. That's how it happened, and why I'm contacting you now, the lawyer said, pulling out a white envelope. He placed it in front of us. This is the will. That's definitely Dad's handwriting, I muttered, verifying the characters on the envelope. My sister Portia seemed a bit salty. Never mind. Just tell us what's in it. I'm busy, you know very well, the lawyer said with a wry smile, opening the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper. This is what was written there. It stated that, besides the house and land, my father's inheritance included some savings and a storage shed. We knew about the house and land, but what's this about a storage shed? As I was pondering this, my sister angrily said to the lawyer, Wait a minute. You didn't mention the farm. Farm? Yes, the farm Dad used to work on as a hobby. My father used to run a company in the next town, but after turning 50, he began to feel his age. I'm thinking of closing the company. I want to take it easy. Is that okay? I heard this when I was in high school. My sister, who was in college at the time, opposed it, but my mother and I, concerned about my father's health, agreed. Don't worry about the money, Portia. We have enough savings, my father reassured her. Reluctantly, she agreed. After that, my father really did close his company and started farming near our home. It feels good to move my body while farming, he said, looking happy. Seeing him like that, I felt glad I had agreed. My sister didn't seem to feel the same. She had said she would return home after graduating from college, but instead, she got a job near her university. Eventually, she married the CEO of an aita company she met through work. Anyway, that's why father was farming until he got sick. My sister insists that the farm should also be part of the inheritance. The lawyer reviewed the documents. After hearing this from my sister, he quickly found a note and said, "The farm is rented land." Rented, I thought. We owned a large piece of land, my sister said, disappointed. Indeed, the farm my father grew vegetables on was spacious, but it might be too much for us, who know nothing about farming. Maybe it's good that it's rented, that's what I thought. The conversation then shifted to dividing the inheritance. As for the division of the inheritance, the house and land go to the wife, the lawyer said. My sister grinned. So we can divide the rest however we want. Please divide the savings and storage shed evenly between you two. Savings means cash, right? I'll take the cash. How much is it? The savings amount to about $100,000. There's no need to pay inheritance tax for this amount. Then I'll take the $100,000 in cash, my sister declared triumphantly. But I couldn't agree with such a selfish arrangement. I strongly protest against my sister. Wait a minute. I object. Why? I'm the oldest daughter. That's irrelevant. You can have the storage shed. What even is that, anyway? My sister turned back to the lawyer, flipping through the documents. The lawyer answered, "It's the storage shed next to the farm. You'll inherit the building, the land, and its contents." With that, my sister's eyes lit up. Even though she's married to the CEO of an aita company, does she still want more money? As I was wondering this, the lawyer told my sister the following. The line comes with it, but it's about 65 square feet, roughly the size of a small bedroom. A small bedroom? Yes, here are the photos. The lawyer placed photos of the shed on the table. Pictures of both the interior and exterior were displayed. The exterior clearly looked like a rundown shack. The inside contained only basic tools like hoe scissors and shovels. Nothing that seemed valuable. I don't want it. My sister grimaced. I painted the photos too. It was all very ordinary. These are sentimental items, but they won't bring in money. As I was thinking this, my sister spoke. Fine, I'll take the cash. You can have that dirty shed. Hold on, that's not fair. You agreed to the vegetable farming. What are you complaining about now? It was hard to argue when she put it that way. Still, if I didn't say something, she'd take all of Dad's inheritance. So we're good then. My sister pressed me as I struggled to answer. My mother chimed in. As long as Portia won't complain later, I have no objections. There's no way I would. Then Portia gets the cash, and Martha gets the shed. Okay, it's settled then, my sister grinned. Feeling uneasy, I immediately objected. Well, I'm not satisfied. Oh, give it up. But you're so greedy, aren't you? That's not it. You're such a hassle. You care more about Dad than money. Right? My sister's words left me speechless. Of course, family is more important than money. Money is important, but it's not something to compare with family. While I was thinking this, my sister quickly ended the conversation. In the end, my mother got the house and land. My sister got Dad's savings. All that was left for me was the dirty shed. After that, my sister signed a document promising not to complain about the inheritance division. Laughter. She laughed, laughing loudly. I was full of complaints. I couldn't help but vent to my mother. Mom, why didn't you help me? I did help you. How? You decided with Portia. That's not true. I made sure you got the shed. I'm not happy about getting that shed. You might find something surprisingly good if you look closely, my mother said with a smile. I could only puff out my cheeks in response. The next day, I took the key from the lawyer and headed to the shed near the field. It was a 10-minute walk from home, a rural road where no one else passed by. I finally reached the field my father had rented. For the past year, he had been hospitalized, so the field was empty. I opened the shed with the key. Wow, it's dusty. The shed was quite dusty, probably because no one had cleaned it. Still, there might be something sentimental from Dad. Thinking this, I looked around the shed. Nothing special here. It was just a dirty shed after all. All I found were tools that I used for farming. They could be considered sentimental, but they weren't anything special. Maybe I should just take what's inside for now. I mumbled, looking around the shed. That's when I noticed something. It looks smaller than from the outside. Maybe it was the dim light, but the inside of the shed felt a bit cramped. Is it just my imagination? Thinking this way, I stepped outside the shed, but something still felt off. After pondering for a bit, I decided to walk around to the back of the shed. The backside was adjacent to a thicket of various trees. To my surprise, there was another door there. Wait, another entrance at the back. I gasped. When I looked from inside the shed, there was only a wall, meaning the only entrance was the door I had used. Yet from the back, there was a door. What's going on? I thought about it. A door on the back should be visible from inside too, but it wasn't. That meant there had to be a wall in between. In other words, there was a space accessible only from the back. The moment I realized this, I got excited. This must be Dad's surprise. Dad always loved surprises. He even surprised me on my birthdays. Memories flooded back, and I found myself tearing up. I quickly returned inside the shed and began searching for the back door key. If it was down, he would have hidden it somewhere in the shed. With that gut feeling, I rummaged through the shed. After a while, I found 2 keys hidden in the handle of a shovel. I went around to the back and tried one of the keys in the door. With a click, the door opened. What could be in here? The space inside was indeed cramped, only about 3 feet wide. A large safe stood alone in the space. Is this from Dad's company? I recognized the safe. It was the same one I saw in the corner of his office when I was a child. Nostalgic, I hugged the safe. This was a true memory of my father. I felt fulfilled. This alone made the inheritance worthwhile. But knowing Dad, this couldn't be the end. There's got to be more surprises, I muttered, and inserted the second key into the safe. With a slightly rusty sound, the safe opened. What? No way. The moment I saw the contents, I was stunned. Inside was an unexpected inheritance. What should I do? Oh, I have to tell Mom. I locked the safe and rushed to my mother. After explaining the situation to her, I called my husband. And with his help, we moved the safe from my parents' house. Then it hit me. The contents of the safe were undoubtedly Dad's. However, if it's part of my inheritance, including the shed, I might have to pay inheritance tax. Better get this checked out thoroughly. The contents of the safe were clearly valuable. I decided to consult the lawyer. Inheritance tax. For that, you should. According to the lawyer, it's better to consult a certified public accountant. So I got a referral to an accountant from a friend. I left all the complicated matters to that accountant. A year passed in this way. Just when I thought things had finally settled down, my sister showed up near my home. "What brings you here all of a sudden?" Well, I had some business at our parents' house." "So you stopped by?" "Yeah, something like that." My sister's behavior was strange. Funny, no matter how you look at it. Even if my home is close to our parents', it is still a 20-minute drive. We're not the kind of sisters who would casually visit, especially after the tension of Dad's inheritance. It's not a relationship that comes into play carelessly. I couldn't shake off my suspicion as I looked at her. Meanwhile, my sister, acting a bit nervous, asked, "Can I come in?" "Sure, but what's the matter?" "I have something to talk about," my sister said, forcing a smile. Reluctantly, I let my sister into the house. After I served some coffee, she started to fidget and then began to speak. "So did you win the lottery or something?" "What? No, I didn't." "Then did your husband get a bonus?" I tilted my head, puzzled. "I never buy lottery tickets because I'm not interested." "My husband, who's a salaried worker, does get a holiday bonus, but it's not that time of year." What on earth is she talking about? Confused, I asked her directly, "Hey, what are you talking about?" Suddenly, my sister got angry. "What are you making fun of me?" "No, what are you talking about?" "Money, money. You have it, don't you?" "Money." "Yes, I heard about it." My sister began to speak excitedly. It was a story from a few days ago. Living in the city, my sister had run into our aunt by chance. The woman started the conversation like this. "I know how hard it's been for you since you lost your father. Are you doing okay?" "Yes, well, I visited him many times when he was sick." "Thank you. But you must be relieved, right? Getting such a big thank you gift." "Thank you gift?" "Yes. Your sister sent me a $500 gift card as a thank you for visiting him." "A gift card?" Needless to say, what caught my sister's attention was the gift card. Hearing that I had sent it, she was convinced I had come into some extra money. "You got a windfall, didn't you? Just admit it." My sister interrogated me. That's what this is about." I sighed. My sister didn't like my attitude and yelled, "What's with that attitude? Are you mocking me?" "No, it was a thank you gift." "So where did you get the money for it?" "That's what I want to know." "From the inheritance, remember." "Inheritance." "Yes, I got the inheritance, so I sent thank you gifts to relatives who had helped us." Upon hearing this, my sister frowned. "All you got was that dirty shed." "Yes, that's true, but you can't sell that for money." "But there was a safe inside it. That's where the real inheritance was." "A safe, real inheritance." I carefully explained to her about the watches in the safe. They were all valuable, collected by my father as a hobby during his lifetime. However, I didn't know their exact value. On the other hand, the remaining savings were about $100,000. Considering he was a business owner who could retire early, that amount seemed small. That led me to think he might have invested a lot in those watches. "If they're valuable, you'll have to pay inheritance tax," my mother had said after seeing the contents of the safe. "What should I do, Mom?" When I asked, my mother thought for a moment and advised, "Things like this always come out. You should declare it properly." "Well, let's ask that lawyer we spoke to recently." So I consulted the lawyer again. I was told that if you inherit valuables, the inheritance tax is determined by their value at that time. I was also told that a certified public accountant could handle it for me, so I left it to the accountant. As a result, it was found the watches alone were worth at least $500,000. With watches this valuable, you'll have to pay inheritance tax. How should I pay it? How about keeping the ones you're emotionally attached to and selling the rest? Certainly, it doesn't make sense to me, who doesn't know the value to hold on to such expensive watches. I'd rather someone who understands their worth have them. With that thought, I sold some of the watches. I used the money from the sale to pay the inheritance tax and sent thank you gifts to the relatives who had helped us. Those thank you gifts were the gift cards my sister was talking about. By the way, what I kept were items like the pocket watch my father often wore. I showed my sister the pocket watch as I told her this story. This one isn't expensive, but it holds the most memories for me. However, my sister frowned upon hearing my story. What? You don't have any left. No, there are still some in the safe. Where's the safe? It's at Mom's. The safe is too big for this house. It's the one Dad used at his company. My sister looked away, seeming deep in thought. I felt uneasy seeing her like this, but right after that, she stood up and said, "I'm leaving." Now that I know where the money came from, and left. Considering how money-minded my sister is, I thought she might demand some of the money from the watch sales. I was relieved she left without making a fuss. However, in my relief, I forgot the unease I had felt earlier. My sister isn't that understanding. I had forgotten that I was reminded of this late that night when I got a call from my mother. "Martha, it's urgent. Come over right away." What happened? It's just really bad. My mother was frantic and unclear. My husband and I rushed to my mother's house. As we approached, we noticed something strange. The area around my parents' house was lit up in red. What's going on? The reason became clear as we got closer. Several police cars were parked outside my parents' house. I pushed through the crowd and called out to my mother, "What happened, Mom?" "Well, Martha, you see." According to my mother, it was after 9 p.m. Feeling tired, she'd gone to bed already. Soon after, she heard strange noises. Sounds like someone searching for something came from beyond the door. Oh, it's a burglar. That's what my mother thought instantly. However, she was the only one in the house. Feeling helpless, she decided to escape through the window. Looking back, she saw the light of a flashlight moving inside the house. This is definitely a burglar. Convinced, she ran to the neighbor's house and said, "Help. There's a burglar." Hearing this, the neighbor immediately came out. They too saw the swinging light my mother was pointing at and called the police, thinking it was a burglar. However, it wasn't a burglar at all. It was my sister who had sneaked into the house. She had gone to rummage through the safe after hearing my story. Neither my mother nor the neighbor had any way of knowing this. Soon the police arrived, and naturally, my sister was shocked, realizing she was in trouble. She tried to make a quick escape. Of course, it's her own family home, so there's no need to run. Yet in her panic, my sister thought she had to escape. In her rush, she bumped into the open door of the safe. As she attempted to run, the already unsteady safe suddenly collapsed, landing squarely on top of her. Portia therefore became ensnared beneath it. Indeed, that is what took place. Is she all right? She insisted on saying her leg hurt, even after the ambulance brought her to the hospital. How in the world was she thinking? I was very taken aback. After that, feeling awful for phoning so late, my mother and I apologized to the police officers who had arrived to assist. I called my sister's spouse as well. "You mean to say that Portia hurt herself after breaking into her own family's house?" "Yes, that is accurate." "What's Portia up to? She never even cleans the house." I sincerely apologize for my sister. That concludes everything. I'm requesting a divorce. Divorce? Actually, my sister's husband said that she had accrued a sizable debt. She had obviously been spending a lot of money on name-brand merchandise. They got into a heated argument once he learned the truth. Ultimately, my sister angrily left the house with the words, "I'll borrow from Mom and pay it back." It turns out that she had settled her bills with the $100,000 she inherited earlier. She came to me, still short, to scrape up more cash. Her actions resulted from learning about the contents of the safe, which in turn caused this entire situation. It makes sense why her spouse was enraged. Ultimately, my sister ended up in the hospital with a shattered leg. After visiting the hospital, her spouse began discussing a divorce. My sister, of course, created a scene. I refused to get divorced. Definitely not. However, it was already too late. The divorce papers had been brought by her spouse. She had no option but to sign when she saw them. She is now dazed and laying on her hospital bed. She is most likely going to start working part-time to pay off her debts because there is a part-time job magazine next to her. For me, that would be a relief. In my case, I made the decision to return to my parents' house following all of the chaos. In addition to my mother, of course, I'm also concerned since I recently found out I'm pregnant. After discussing it, my husband and I made the decision to return home, enlisting my mother's assistance with the kids and daycare. Though I'm sure he would be pleased for us, I wish I could have told my father about the pregnancy when he was still living. I thus want to give birth to a healthy child.